Thank you so very much for joining us on this session to cover advanced techniques with Copilot Studio. We have an awesome lineup for you today, including Kelly Kaysen and Andrew Roger from our SLG team. But we also have a special guest with Kendra Springer from our product group. We aim to provide a digital event today that respects all individuals. We ask that everyone assist in providing a welcoming and safe environment. And we bring 3 of these events to our customers every month, with each typically taking place on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. If there's a topic that you would like to hear about in the future, please post that in the chat now for consideration. And we're also going to have a feedback form available at the end of this. Do also please note that we take the month of July off to kind of reset and sort of process some of the changes that we want to look towards for next fiscal year. But we'll be back in August, and I'll get you the dates of when all those are taking place. To minimize distractions or potential background noise today, we are going to leverage the chat for questions. Please post your questions in the chat and any time during today's session, and we will get to them and make sure that those get answered for you. Additionally, we do send follow-ups via email. These follow-ups will contain the recording and the deck used by our presenters. If you don't want to be included in the follow-ups in the future, please reply, and we will take you off of our distribution list. And with that, thank you, Kelly, Andrew, and Kendra for presenting on this topic today and helping our customers get the most out of their investment in Microsoft Business applications. With that, please take it away, Kelly.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate that. Thanks, everyone, for joining. And thanks, everyone, for your flexibility on joining a day early. We typically do these on Thursdays, but with the holiday tomorrow, we had to quickly audible. Craig, if you don't mind going one more slide to our speaker slide, just a quick overview. I'm Kelly Kaysen. I'm a technical specialist on the SLG team here. Andrew is a peer of mine as well, so you guys might be familiar with me. Andrew joined fairly recently, so this will be his first time doing a Tech Series session. And then we have a special guest, Kendra, as Craig mentioned, who is part of our Copilot Studio product group. So pretty rare for us to be able to bring someone like this onto a session of ours. So if you have questions about the product, the future, maybe some of the implications of the things we're sharing in being available in GCC, as we know that's always ever important, please feel free to throw those in the chat, and we'll have some extra knowledge on staff today. So with that, Andrew, if you want to kick us off, that would be great.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Kelly. I will take over the share. Let me know if that comes up.
Yeah, I just brought it on screen for you. Looks good.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, great. So I'll go ahead and get things kicked off here with an agenda just to kind of go through what we're going to be covering in this session. So I'm going to start with a Copilot Studio overview where I'm really going to focus on some of the generative AI capabilities within Copilot Studio, as well as some authoring features that you can leverage in your topics as you're building out your agents. I'll then pass it over to Kelly, who's going to walk through a DMV agent demo. And then, like Kelly mentioned, we have Kendra here from our product team. She's going to do a recap of Microsoft Build, which took place last month, and talk about some of the new exciting features coming to Copilot Studio. And then we'll wrap up with a demo of the Copilot Studio Estimator tool. So I'll get into the overview. We have a lot to cover. And again, this is going to be more around generative AI and some authoring features within Copilot. If you're looking for more of a 100 or 200 level overview of the platform, we do have some resources linked in this deck as well. But just to orient everybody, Copilot Studio is a powerful low-code platform for creating custom agents that can really be tailored to your specific business needs. And it's a single platform where you can manage the entire life cycle of an agent, from design to build to actually monitoring those agents after they're published. And when you start thinking about generative AI inside of Copilot Studio, the first and maybe the most crucial decision you'll have to make is around orchestration and the type of orchestration you want to choose for your agent. And there's 2 different options that you have to choose from. We have classic and generative orchestration. When you choose to go with classic orchestration, your agent is going to always try to respond to the user's query by triggering a single topic whose trigger phrases match most closely with the actual user's query. On the other hand, if you go with generative orchestration, this is going to give your agent more autonomy to really decide how to best respond to that user query. So it's first going to try to recognize what the intent is, and then it's going to choose the best tools, knowledge, and topics that it has available that you've equipped that agent with to answer back to the user. So just on a high level to summarize, right, generative orchestration is going to allow your agent to use a combination of the tools that you equip it with, so the topics, the knowledge, actions, where classic orchestration is always going to look for a single topic to respond to the user with. And then moving forward, once you've made that decision around orchestration, you can start leveraging some really powerful generative AI capabilities within your agent. The first one I'll talk through is generative answers. So these empower your Copilot to really go beyond just static responses that you might put into a topic and start using AI to craft dynamic natural language responses that are also aware of the context of that conversation. And so if you look at the screenshot, you'll see that you do have some control over the properties of these generative answers. You can decide, for example, what knowledge sources you want that generative answer to leverage. Next, we have generative actions. And this goes back to what I was talking about on the previous slide. So inside of Copilot Studio, right, once you've enabled generative orchestration for your agent can actually start to create dialogue and take action dynamically, chaining together the different actions, topics, knowledge sources that it has available. And these actions are particularly powerful in the sense that when you're creating an agent, it can oftentimes be really hard to anticipate all of the different queries that it might receive and then create a pre-built topic around that. So these generative actions give your agent flexibility to really respond to a wide range of questions. And then lastly, we have generative building. I'm going to go rather quickly on this because not all of these capabilities are available yet in GCC. But today, GCC, you do have the ability to create a topic with natural language. So you can describe what you want your topic to do, and then AI will create that for you. And it's a really helpful way to accelerate your development. You can let AI take the first draft at that topic, and then you can always go in there and further customize it or tailor it to meet your requirements. Okay, so next we have prompts. This is another generative AI capability that you can leverage when you're authoring your agents and your topics. It's a really powerful tool that allows you as a builder to define reusable and tailored instructions that can help guide your agent on how to respond to a user query given certain circumstances. So if you think about an example, if you're maybe creating an agent and one of its tasks is to help residents understand if they may be eligible for specific benefits, you could create a prompt inside of one of your topics, and then you can equip that prompt with different knowledge sources. So in this example, that might be the actual eligibility for the criteria to see who's eligible for these particular benefits. And then once you give it that knowledge, you can also provide it with instructions. So you could tell that prompt to, take the user details that were captured earlier on in that conversation and use that eligibility criteria document to see if a particular resident is, maybe eligible for that benefit, and then summarize that in a response back to the resident with the link to the document so that they can, verify that on their own. But that's just one example. The prompts are really valuable when it comes to providing context-aware responses, especially when there might be a high level of variance in terms of the user inputs for a specific scenario. Okay, and the last slide that I have here before I pass it over to Kelly, I just want to walk through some of these authoring features that you could leverage inside of your topics. I'm going to focus really mainly on the first three because Kelly is going to show these in his demo, and I think they're especially useful. The first one is around designing rich responses, specifically with adaptive cards. So adaptive cards, if you haven't used them, they're a lightweight, flexible way to really present visually interactive content inside of apps as well as chats. Inside of Copilot Studio, you can leverage them in a variety of different ways. The first way you can use them is to collect information from end users. So instead of having a multi-turn exchange where you need to collect 4 or 5 pieces of information from that end user, you could have them submit it in a nicely formatted adaptive card. You can also leverage them to display disclaimer messages like we'll see in Kelly's demo. And then lastly, you could use them to validate information. And the nice thing about these adaptive cards is that you could really provide a nice user-friendly experience by adding images or videos directly onto the cards. There's also an adaptive card designer inside of Copilot Studio that you can leverage to create these in a very low-code fashion. Next, we have PowerFX, and I'll talk a little bit about how you can use PowerFX inside of topics. Now, you might be familiar with PowerFX. It's a low-code declarative programming language. If you've ever built a Power App, you've used PowerFX inside of the Power Apps Studio. Now, inside of your actual topics, you can use it in a variety of different ways. The first is really helpful when it comes to formatting data. So if you have an action inside of your topic that's going out, it's making an API call, and then you have JSON that's being returned to that topic, PowerFX can really help format that, extract variables from that JSON so that you can use them later on in your topic. You can also use PowerFX for calculations or even enhanced conditional logic. So when you think about what PowerFX can bring to your topics, it can help make them more dynamic and intelligent. And then lastly, we have the code side-by-side view. So now within Copilot Studio, as you're building an agent, you can open up the actual code editor where you can see the underlying YAML representation of that topic that you're working on. And as a maker, you can decide where you want to work. Do you want to work in the visual designer on that actual contact tree or conversation tree, or do you want to work in the YAML code editor? So you have a lot of flexibility there. Okay, so with that, I will pass it over to Kelly, who's going to dive into the DMV demo.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate that. I'll take over share here if you don't mind just letting me know when you see that pop on your screen.
Yep, looking good.
Awesome. Perfect. So we have a DMV agent that I have created here. And the first thing that I'm going to do is take us through a demonstration of actually just using the agent. And the beauty of Copilot Studio is if it's built well, you don't really see the complexity on the user side or the front end side. But as a citizen, there's various things that I might want to do or engage my DMV about. One of them might be license renewal. So we have a couple short links here. We'll start with license renewal, and we'll go through the process of actually interacting with this agent virtually. And the first thing it's going to do is validate or verify who I am. So the first thing it says is, what's your driver's license number? We're going to input that, and it's going to follow up with what's the expiration date. So now we have two fields that are aligned to my driver record in our database. And you can use the various different fields that you want to validate someone on. This is just an example, but this is a way to sort of leverage that information in your data source to validate who you're actually speaking with if they're not authenticated into your website already. And so you see here, it says, I found a driver record match for you. Your license is valid, so you are eligible to renew online. So based on my license still being active, it's not expired, I could then proceed and renew this. And if I said yes, this could link me to a website, to a form, or you could even continue the process here within the Copilot Studio window and fill out some of that information. But what we did here is we validated the user, and we also linked it back to a record in our database. So even if I say, no thanks, I'm not going to renew, I was just checking, I want to do something else, I actually want to change my address. So now when I select address change, it's not going to ask me the same questions again because it knows who I am. So contextually, we are now carrying around that contact record for the rest of this chat session. So it says, great, I can help with that. I actually have your driver record still pulled up from earlier in the conversation. Go ahead and give us your new address. And we can just input, whatever our new address is, 500 Rainbow Road, Dallas, Texas, since that's where I'm at. And we can enter that. And it's going to take that information. It's going to update my address for my contact record in our database system because, we've already identified who we're working with. And if we flip quickly to look at my record within, this is a model-driven app, we have my contact record here. And when I open it, we can see that my address has now been updated to what we just assigned it to within the chat window. The other piece of this might be doing various different things that get you information. For example, an office locator. There's numerous DMV offices within Dallas, for example. So if I hit office locator, it's going to, instead of maybe asking for a specific location or even asking for me to approve it determining my location, it's just asking for something simple like, hey, what's your zip code? And we can take with just that little bit of information, grab that zip code and actually calculate the distance between that user and our DMV offices that we have stored in our database. So they have an address associated with them, and we are, doing necessary things on the back end to convert the location of this user and actually provide the distance and information that you see here in miles to each of our locations. And if I even said, yeah, I'd love directions to this particular location, it looks like it's near me. Now with a nice adaptive card, we have the address, and I can even punch out and get directions. So this can launch the Maps engine on my phone or on my browser, and you can see that here we have our location. And then finally, once we have a location in mind, there's a scenario where we might even want to book an appointment. We want to come in and schedule an appointment. And, if you work in GCC, you know that this can be a little tricky to execute on, with Microsoft Bookings being sort of a challenging piece that's not available in GCC yet. But maybe you store these appointments within your data source. In this example, Dataverse. And so it says, yeah, we can schedule an appointment. Let me go ahead and grab your details. I did launch a new session, so it's now asking who I am, but we can put a quick name in here. Let's go Mario Kart. And then it's going to ask for my email because it's going to send me a calendar invite. And we'll just give it something silly like Mario Party at outlook.com. And so now it has basic information to not only send me a calendar invite, but we can also create a contact record on the back end now for this person. So if you ever wanted to build out mailing lists or do stuff with that information, you can kind of facilitate that automatically. Now, something that's really simple in nature is sharing these appointments and allowing me to select one of them to book. It's giving me the next 4 available appointments, and I can simply select, June 19th at 4 p.m., and it's going to book that appointment for me. But if you've ever worked with Copilot Studio, and presenting records as options to select as opposed to type in is, fairly tricky and a really cool thing to be able to do. So we were able to display those times, allow them to select it, and we're good to go. Is there anything else I can help you with? I'm going to say no thanks, and then it caps off our conversation with an AI generated valediction where it says, thank you, have a great afternoon. If it were morning, it would say, have a great morning. If it were nighttime, it would say, have a great evening, because we can use generative responses to dynamically adjust to the time of day. So we're doing some really cool things, but let's dive into the back end here and actually take a peek at, what we're sharing. And screen froze temporarily, so we'll give it a second to refresh.
And while you're doing that, Kelly, there was actually one question in the chat. Has this been deployed in a state where their actual DMV is using something like this?
Not to my knowledge yet. However, there may be some people on my team that have experienced that. I'm certainly speaking to DMV agencies who are trying to do things like this. That's what inspired me building it to begin with. So, yeah, I think it's definitely in the works, if not already live somewhere. Right? It wouldn't be a live demo if my computer wasn't crawling.
Keeps it interesting.
Definitely does. Thank you. We have a backup plan if this continues. Craig, I may need to rejoin really quickly.
No worries at all. So
Yeah,
while
let me try that. Give me 2 seconds.
no
Buy me
worries,
a
go
little
ahead.
time.
So
Thanks.
while Kelly's doing that, there was a question in the chat about, can you send an email whenever you're updating this kind of data? There's a few different ways to do it. I did kind of mention this in the chat, but just to sort of elaborate on that a little bit. You can trigger that from directly within the Copilot Studio agent itself, because again, Power Automate fairly seamlessly integrates with all of these tools. So while that's happening, you have the ability to have a generative action that then triggers either a topic or a workflow or something like that from within Copilot Studio to send that email. Or you could have it set up to where, as you're updating the data in Dataverse itself, the database that sits behind it, you can have that then trigger a Power Automate flow, which then prompts an email and sends that update to the user or whomever initiated that, or however you'd want to configure it. So there's a few different ways to do that. There is no right or wrong answer. It really just kind of depends on how you want to do your implementation, but it's most certainly possible.
All right, I'm back. My browser crashed on me, but I have a deck here so we can still go through a lot of what we were showing there.
No worries at all. Go right ahead.
All right, if you can just validate that my screen is visible to you.
I can see it.
Okay, perfect. So sorry for the technical difficulties. I was hoping to kind of go into the back end and show you how that was all curated, but we still have a deck that kind of lays it all out. So the first thing that we looked at, as Andrew mentioned, was adaptive cards. So just the ability to kind of spice up the UI of your particular agent, whether that was the intro card that you saw here, where we have images and text and kind of a different way to organize our information, but also, like interactive things like the mapping adaptive card, which had an actual button that you saw here, which allows us to get directions and load URLs and various different things. So we certainly encourage you to use adaptive cards. They are, even for myself, you have access to the native sort of payload editor down here, which shows you the JSON, but it's really meant to be drag and drop, right? You have all of your elements over here on the left-hand side, which allow you to create these different adaptive cards, whether that's images, buttons, action sets, tables, you name it. You drag them onto your card and it will create the JSON for you. And you have all of your card structure over here. So as you highlight it, you have your properties where you can assign the URL and the image file and the action you want it to take when you select buttons. And so, it's really, really a convenient way that Microsoft has developed for you to go and build these out. And there is a full library of information that you can access that shows you either how to write the JSON, how to format responsive cards, and even card galleries. So you can see this is a super nice one with media, with a rating, with different action buttons, and it shows up well on your Teams application within a chat window, whatever it might be. And so this is all available to you to leverage, and I've included some links in this deck which we'll share out with you to kind of learn how to leverage these. And I'll tell you this, as somebody who isn't going to write one of these from scratch in JSON, you can also use Copilot to generate them for you. They're extremely good at it. So I definitely advise you to kind of start playing with those to improve the way that your agent looks, and so it's not just a question answer text driven type of interaction. The second thing that we did was we validated who we were actually interfacing with, and we did that by asking a couple questions, right? We asked for the license number and the expiration date, and we actually validated the license number using something called an entity. If you're not familiar with entities, there's several that exist out of the box, like age, city, state, date. And these are entities that are designed to extract the specific information out of a user's response and verify that it fits the right format. I created a custom entity for license number, which allowed me to create a regex pattern that fits, a made-up license string that the user would provide. But this allows you to say, hey, what's your license number? And somebody could say, oh, I left it in my backpack. Let me go get it. My license number is X, and it will know only to extract the license number. Once we have those two pieces of information, we're feeding that into a flow. And in that flow, we are validating that the license number matches the one provided by the user, and same thing with the expiration date. That's how we can find the user in our system, validate who we are, and then on the back end, we are actually feeding that contact record that we find back to Copilot Studio. So one, we have a string that says we did find a record, and two, we have a string that says this contains that contact ID. And that's really, really beneficial for updating things downstream like we did with the address change. So once you go out, you find that contact in your system, you feed that GUID for that record back to Copilot Studio, and then you can use it in different topics now that it's considered or set as a global variable there. And so the way we were able to carry that through to the address update generative action is like this, right? For starters, we saw that yes, global record found was true. So we don't have to ask them again for who they are or to provide any other information. But then in our generative action, which is a Dataverse connector, we are updating the address by setting the row ID to that global contact GUID. So that's how we know whose record we're updating. And then we're dynamically filling out the address, right? We received the whole address from the user, and we're using AI to dynamically fill with the best option. You can set this as a value, but for anybody who's worked with addresses in the Dataverse, you know that those columns are actually broken out into street one, city, state, zip code. So there would be some manual work on your end to kind of splice that address into each of those columns. But in this case, we're just telling it to dynamically fill each column as you understand the address, which really takes away a lot of the work that we need to do. And you see that here. So now when you kind of apply that action within our topic, right? We receive the address, we're identifying it as a street address, and now we are running that generative action, which is a direct to Dataverse connector. You don't even need to punch out to Power Automate. It's all happening natively within Copilot Studio. So as we saw with Street 1, we're also seeing the exact same thing with city, right? So here is our city, which is another column, and we're dynamically filling it. And then we're just supplying it to the description, basically the instructions. I want you to type the city for the address provided. Same thing for the street. I want you to type the first line for the address provided. And it works extremely well, and it cuts out a lot of the time that I have to take to develop that. The next thing that we saw was calculating distance. So being able to take the zip code provided by somebody and convert that into Latin long values and calculate the distance between them and different locations. And so what we did was we built a basic flow that has a HTTP GET request that converts our zip code provided into Latin long values. We also get our DMV offices from our data source in Dataverse. And then we are running a prompt. So you can run this directly in Copilot Studio, or you can do the same thing within Power Automate. But this allows us to assign instructions to an AI model to help us do various different things. Now, this looks like a lot, but this prompt is really, really specific. Basically, what I'm saying here is you're going to receive a JSON body that looks like this. And this is what's created by the HTTP action. And we have assigned that dynamic value here with the HTTP output. So it's always going to get the updated information. And it basically says you're going to need to extract the latitude and longitude from that JSON body, and then do the same thing for all of our DMV office locations that you get from the Dataverse. And I have dynamically added those latitude and longitude columns from that table here. And then I want you to calculate the distance, and then I want you to return it in a string value that looks like this, in this format to some capacity. So it's a really detailed prompt, but it's actually just plain English for me and a really complex formula on the back end that I don't need to do. I don't know if you guys have ever calculated distance before, but any math equation on paper looks scary, but this one's particularly scary, which is the Haversine formula, which is effectively what I would need to do manually with code to do this. But instead, I'm just saying, hey, can you do this for me? And it spits out the information that I need, which is really, really cool and saves me a ton of time. And in many ways, for someone like me, it maybe even makes this possible, whereas it might not be otherwise. So then when we see within the agent, this is the result that we get back. We get a few offices found nearby, their respective distances from me, and of course, prompting me to determine if I would like directions to them. Now, lastly, we talked about sharing appointment times as an option set to collect or for the user to select, right? So as opposed to just displaying text times and saying, here's a bulleted list of all the appointment times, and then I have to type in which one I want. We want to provide this to the user as just a simple option to select. So again, we have to go out to Power Automate, use an action, a generative action with a flow to find the available appointment times. Of course, we want the ones that are available and haven't been booked. And once we retrieve those, we're actually generating a JSON body. And we're using a select action to create that body to send back to Copilot Studio each of the appointment records that can then be booked. If there's one thing you learned from me today, it is that if you want to use the option set in Copilot Studio from a variable, and it's a JSON body, one header has to be called display name, just like this, because the agent needs to know what field to use to display to the user. If you don't use this, you will receive an error, and you might be like me, kind of banging your head on the wall, like, what's going on? That is mandatory. And once you've done that, there is a built-in node where you can go to variable management and use parse value. So you don't even have to do this in Power Automate. There is a native function in Copilot Studio to parse out a variable for you. And so what we do is we take that JSON body that we get back from Copilot Studio. That's the value we want to parse. We edit the schema, and we select from sample data. And in here, we just paste the JSON that comes back from that select action in Power Automate. This is mine. I have two fields here. I have the GUID for the appointment, again, so we can set it as booked in our system. But then we have our display name field with the actual time itself. So then once that JSON is added as the sample data, we'll then save it as a new variable as our parsed appointments. And we then select the question node, and under identify, we have this option called options from a list variable. So now we can actually take that variable that we created after parsing it and assign it to our actual list variable here. And that creates those options as the button effectively. So the user just has to click it. They don't have to they don't have to type anything in, as you can see here on the right? So really, really simple for the user, but not the easiest thing to do on the back end until now. And now it's incredibly simple and really, really beneficial. So let me stop there. Apologies for the technical difficulties. Wanted to show you that natively, but my browser decided to give up on me. So, but with that, let me pass it over to Kendra, who's going to take us through a recap of build, as well as some information about the Copilot Studio estimator. And so I'll stop talking. Kendra, please take it over.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Real quick, Kelly, just to confirm, will these folks get this deck after?
Yes. Yep. We will send all this out in a follow-up.
Okay, because I am going to speed through it. So some of the demos we might not get to, but they are in this deck, and I will do my best to move as quickly as possible so we can get to everything. Okay, so real quick, I'm Kendra Springer. As was said in the beginning, I have focused on all areas of this product, from product design to product development. And I now work on product strategy, positioning. I work with customers just like yourselves and our amazing field team. So I'm grateful to be here. I wanted to start out just by really kind of level setting on real scenarios and real ways to use agents within your organizations. And we see agents being deployed across every industry. We have a ton of major customers in professional services, travel, government, retail, financial services, manufacturing, right? We also have an opportunity to leverage within these organizations agents across all departments, right? So customer service, you could think about externally an agent helping your partners, your customers get answers to the questions they need quickly, self-serve, self-help, return an item, etc., all without having to speak to a human, getting their problem solved quickly. However, if they do need to speak to a human, enabling your call support or your customer support folks with an agent that is their partner, that helps them learn from previous cases, see trends, see previous buying history or service history with this customer through CRM, integrated CRM data, is massively powerful and just improves that customer experience. Same thing with sales and marketing. Externally, a number of our customers, Holland America is a publicly available customer. You can go and check out their agent, Anna, and try it out yourself. They've seen a massive return on investment, 18 times increase in successful cruises booked since deploying their agent, Anna, but also internally being able to have your account teams prepared with just-in-time, client notes, walking into a customer, helping to build strategic sales strategies, and so much more. And then, of course, IT, operations, HR. These are all massively powerful use cases for agents. And so getting into some of the updates I've built. Now, this is not everything, and I will not have enough time to drain all these slides. But just from a high level, some that I want to call out, these agents, and when I say the embedded agent builder, this is the experience that you see inside of Copilot when you are creating an agent in the left-hand rail. They moved it from the right to the left. I know that Copilot is actively working to be in GCC and GCC High. I believe the timeline for this is later this month. So you will get access to these agents if you haven't been able to try them out already, and they will be compliant there. But with this new update with UX enhancements, you will now have a much easier way to share agents, to create agents in a full page experience. You will have additional knowledge capabilities, so you can use Teams chats, you can use your email, calendar, etc. We also are bringing more intelligence in how we recommend which knowledge is right for your agent. So we surface most recently used documents and other maybe pertinent information that you have access through the Microsoft Graph to leverage inside of your agent. And then last but not least, we're bringing knowledge parity from custom agents inside of Copilot Studio into these Copilot agents built in the embedded agent builder. And the first of this is being able to upload files directly and just drag and drop them right into your agent. I am going to skip. Okay, my PowerPoint froze, sorry. I was skipping a demo there just so we can get to some of our more powerful demos in the next section. So moving from those, making information workers more effective with that partnership between Copilot Studio and M365 Copilot, we're going to move into more of that enterprise solution space. So this is agents created inside of Copilot Studio and deployed either internally back to Teams or to Copilot or SharePoint, or externally within your website, social media site, telephony solution, etc. Some scenarios here I've already talked a little bit about. Customer service, supply chain management is massive. But the big thing that I want to kind of reiterate is that Copilot Studio is an end-to-end SaaS solution. So we're able to manage and support the full 360 lifecycle of your agents, from creation to deployment to analyzing, monitoring, improving, and then continuing to refine. So let's get into some of these updates. And I'm so sorry, my PowerPoint is very sticky and slow today. So one of the key areas is knowledge. And I do want to call out, because some of you may be experiencing this currently. There's an existing incident that we are managing on the engineering time side related to quality of answers coming from these grounded knowledge sources in GCC. So this is definitely something that uniquely is hitting GCC customers. And so this is one that we are actively pushing and looking to improve. So if you're experiencing that, I wanted to call that out and let you know we hear you, we are on it. But on top of that, we are also bringing additional knowledge types. So there are a ton of available knowledge types coming, and here's a full list. So just to call out a couple of changes, uploading files directly to these custom agents are now GA, Dataverse is now GA. We have brought Azure AI Search. So if you've built a custom index inside of Azure AI Foundry and you want to leverage it inside of Copilot Studio, that's available for GA. And then we brought in a number of additional third-party knowledge sources. We have Databricks, Snowflake, Confluence. One big one that was a massive ask was SharePoint lists. And so that is also available. And again, I apologize, I'm moving quickly. Just want to get to everything. This particular one is going to be massively important to you all. I believe as soon as all of these capabilities roll out, all of this should be available in GCC. I tried my darndest over the last week to get a full breakdown for you all, but we are right in the middle of planning and coming out of a major reorg. So I wasn't successful there, but by the end of this month, I will have a list of when all of these features are projected to be available in GCC, and I will work with Kelly to get that information out to this community. But for fine-grained control over your RAG, this is highly important in enabling you to get better responses. So for those of you that have tried it today, if you don't get a response that you're expecting, you're kind of SOL. You have no tools to help you debug. You don't know where to go next. You don't have control of that pipeline. And so we are bringing you both debugging capabilities and additional control. So you're able to provide instructions and additional prompts. So you can do things like, if this is a benefits agent and you want it to first look up the company code to show the location of the employee, and then feed that in as a part of the prompt when performing RAG over your data, you now have the capability to do that. And I have a great demo here shortly that I will show you. Additionally, we've added some additional analytics enhancements. So let's get to that demo. This is from one of my PMs, Hardik Modi, and let me make sure I'm sharing with sound. Okay.
In this demo, I'm going to show you how knowledge instructions provide makers more controls that help their agent provide answers to complex questions based on some context. I'm going to take example of a healthcare company called Molina. They operate in all 50 states, and in each of the states, they have multiple plans. For each of the plan, they have summary of benefits document, which explains what benefits they have, what counties it is offered in, and everything related to the plan. Here, I have added all those files as a single knowledge source, and I've provided instructions. As you can see, I have provided natural language instructions, which is make sure you only pick 2025 documents, and that too based on some variables. These variables are the context. Now let's see it in action. It is asking me what plan ID I am in. I'm going to provide the plan ID, which is H303801. Now it is ready to answer any questions that I have. I'm going to ask the question, which is, what additional supplemental benefits are included? As you can see, now my agent is sifting through all the documents in that collection, and it is taking into account the instructions that I have provided, which is figure out the best document based on the plan ID. The agent comes back with an answer, which is based on the right document. This is how knowledge instructions provide Maker additional control where they can express in natural language how their agent can answer complex questions based on some context. Thank you.
And
In this demo, I'm
don't need to rewatch the demo.
going to show you
the next one. 1 second, my PowerPoint.
in this demo.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so we are moving on to autonomous. I'll run through this real quickly. Not a ton has changed at build, but prior to build, autonomous capabilities went GA. We have autonomous agent templates coming soon. They slipped build, but these templates will really help you to get started and build these capabilities much easier, much faster. And then we did light up deep reasoning inside of our autonomous agents. One question I get is, will we be able to pick a different model when performing this deep reasoning? Because today it's GPT-4o, it's our premium model, and that ability to choose your model is also coming post-build as well. Kelly, do you want to jump in here? Just because I know nothing about this, but I want to do it justice.
Yeah, that's okay. Really quickly. So for everyone who's joining our tech series sessions next week, on Thursday, my teammate Tim Hanowich will be doing a full session on autonomous agents. So we're not going to dive deep into that today, but we will dive deep into it next week and have a whole session dedicated to it.
Awesome. Thank you. And if you're interested after that session or before that session to learn more about common use cases and hear some customer wins, we can absolutely make sure that Tim is fully plugged in with a lot of those, and I'm happy to follow up on any questions. Okay, multi-agent. I know that this is one that people are chomping at the bit for. So essentially, we brought our generative orchestration to GA about the month before build. This was critical because in order to support multi-agent, the same orchestrator that orchestrates across the tools and knowledge inside of your agent, it's the same orchestrator that orchestrates across connected agents. And so today you can break your agent into more module agents and then have a root agent that's able to call the correct agent to handle the query. This solves a couple of problems. The first is having a manageable agent that doesn't need to boil the ocean and solve everything, where you start to potentially get some overlap in descriptions, right? Or overlap of intents. And so you're able to really specialize the agents in their core area. The other problem that it solves is today it's on the end user to understand which agent they need to talk with to get help, to get the support. And so now they have one point of entry, one root agent that then can hand off to the correct agent. And the plan is to be able to orchestrate across agents that are not only Copilot Studio agents, but external agents and external to Copilot Studio agents external to Microsoft. So things built in Azure AI Foundry or Copilot agents or a Google agent, etc. So that is coming soon. Public preview for this is going to be available at the end of this month. This was one that I was pushing really hard on GCC capability. I believe, and my PM was validating this prior to us meeting, because the orchestrator is available, this capability and these connected agents should be available during public preview at the end of the month. But again, I will provide all of these dates when I get final confirmation. So let's go ahead and take a look at a powerful demo that showcases the new powerful orchestrator available in GA, connected agents handing off to those more specialized agents, how easy it is to add an agent, and then lastly, our multilingual capabilities inside supporting the generative orchestrator.
This demo will show Copilot Studio's new multi-agent capability and how it's made even more powerful when combined with the new multilingual support for generative orchestration. I'm building out an agent for Contoso Bank using the new multi-agent features. Starting from the New Agents tab, I can now create more focused and specialized agents to handle specific use cases, or extend my agent's capabilities by connecting to existing agents built with Copilot Studio, Azure Foundry, Agents SDK, or Azure Fabric. I've already added some more specialized agents to handle balance checks, transferring funds, or like this one, for when a user needs to report a lost or stolen card. Here, I provided instructions as to how the agent should behave, referencing tools explicitly using the new instruction builder. And just like any agent, I can also add knowledge and tools for this agent to use as well. When I test this agent by saying I've lost my card, you can see that the correct agent is selected and starts to follow my instructions. This now gives me high control over how tools are chained together to meet a specific goal. And with the conversation now entirely driven by the underlying LLM, users can be incredibly natural with their responses, such as correcting mistakes, or such as here, when I simply say I didn't recognize the last 2 transactions. I'd now like to extend this agent to be able to handle mortgage-related queries. The mortgages team at the bank have already built their own agent for this in Copilot Studio. Back on the agent list, I can easily connect to this agent in just a couple of clicks. And instantly, my agent can now hand off to the mortgage agent to answer mortgage-related questions. These new multi-agent capabilities are incredibly powerful because they unlock the ability for makers to have high control over fully generated conversations without any manual authoring required. And we can make it even more powerful with the new multilingual support that we're adding to the generative orchestrator. Heading to the agent settings, I'll add Spanish as an additional language for my agent. Once I've added any additional languages, nothing else is needed. Because the conversations are now fully generated end-to-end, the orchestrator handles additional languages without the need for the user to upload any manual translations. You can see here that although my instructions and tools were entirely authored in English, the orchestrator follows them with ease, even when interacting in another language. This means I can author my agent in a single language, but enable it in every single other language supported by Copilot Studio in seconds. And even when my agent calls upon an agent that has not been made available in all languages, this is handled as well, such as here where I ask about mortgage payments. Multilingual support for the generative orchestrator will be available in public preview 2 weeks from now, with GA following quickly around 4 weeks later.
All right, so that is multi-agent. We're going to skip a couple of things, channel improvements. The one that I do want to call out is that you can now publish a custom agent directly to a SharePoint site. So now it can be grounded on those documents as well as documents external to SharePoint, as well as perform task completion. So that's a big one that we know a lot of folks are excited about. A couple of things on testing. We have made updates, as you saw in that demo, to our activity map. So you have a much more robust vision into the chain of thought of that agent. Why did it make that decision? Why that tool? What information was it looking for? How did it reason over it? What knowledge source, etc. So again, much easier to help debug and also build confidence in your agent. We lit up evaluation test cases. So one thing that was missing that a lot of folks needed to really gain trust in the generative AI capabilities is automated test cases. And you can now use AI to actually generate those test cases or test evaluations and then manually change some of the questions if you'd like to. And then you see robust evaluation testing results, and you can drill in to understand why they passed or failed. And so this is going to be extremely powerful for deploying enterprise agent solutions. So let's see a quick demo of that
Here
now.
is our travel
Hey,
assistant.
Kendra, really quick.
Yep.
It's designed to answer.
We only have a
You
couple
want me to
minutes
move
left.
around? Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking we only have a couple minutes left. I think it might be most beneficial to cover the estimator.
Switch to
If
the
you're
estimator.
able to just jump there, and then
Yep.
that way
Yep, I can.
everyone's
And
familiar
then,
with
yeah,
that tool.
all the demos are in here so you can look at them on your own. Thank you, Kelly. I was waiting for you to be like, okay, switch. Okay, Copilot Studio Estimator. I built this tool, so if you have any questions, definitely pop them in the chat and I'll follow up after the meeting. We are really excited about this capability because with PayGo, you need a way to kind of ballpark and understand what this cost would look like for these agents. So this tool helps you forecast the consumption of your agent, and it's built off of telemetry trends that we have for the over 6 years of building and deploying chatbots and agents that we can build from to help you understand how this agent will leverage the capabilities you give it. It estimates based on your direct feature usage and your direct estimations for how those features will be used. And it's accessible from a number of different places. You can access it directly from aka.ms/Copilot Studio Estimator, or within these 4 places. So it's available in the Power Platform Admin Center, right in the Copilot Studio homepage, in the marketing page, and in the Azure pricing page. So let me grab the estimator real quick and move it over to this side, and I will just run through a quick demo for how to use. I don't want to split my screen. Okay, so here I am in the estimator. You'll see at the top, we give you a way to convert the messages to currency. And then you're able to decide how you would like to estimate your usage. You can, by default, it's based on that telemetry that I was talking about, which I think is going to be the most helpful. But if you want the ability to just go ahead and type in, I have, this many knowledge sources requiring the graph, and this is how often my agent will use them, you can also calculate it that way. We wanted to give you the tool based on your preferences. I'll go back to based on telemetry, and you just start out by first, we're trying to get to the agent traffic. How often will this agent be leveraged? So how many users have access to this agent? And on average, about how often will they use it? So I'm going to do a benefits agent, and I think per month, my 1,000 employees will access it twice. It is employee facing. You could also choose customer or external facing, but you'll notice when I choose employee facing, I then have the option to say whether or not any of my employees have a Copilot license. And if so, oftentimes we see hybrid organizations, so I'm able to support that as well. So 100 of my 1,000 have Copilot license. This will take care of any of that 0 rating or what's included in those licensing behind the scenes, so you don't have to worry about calculating that out. Then you're able to select your orchestration. I'm going to select my generative orchestration, which leverages LLM. If you have any questions, you can learn more very easily or go dive deeper into documentation. Then agents do 2 things. They answer questions or they complete tasks for your user, right? So this first question is getting at about how much of the traffic is going to be Q&A and require that grounded knowledge. For simplicity purposes, I'm going to say 50% of it is. And you'll notice when I put 50% there, we intelligently calculate, okay, the rest must be task completion through actions and topics. And then of that knowledge that I'm using, how much of that knowledge requires that tenant graph grounded knowledge? It could be none, it could be zero, it could be 100%. And then I have no other knowledge types. And reminder, other knowledge types are websites, files directly, or Dataverse. So I'll stick with tenant graph grounding for now because I'm using SharePoint and a couple other third-party graph connectors. Moving into actions and topics. So this is your task completion traffic. I'm able to say, okay, how often per month, or sorry, do I have any agent flows? Flows are built in Power Automate or in our new agent flows inside of Copilot Studio. This is that step-by-step automation. Let's say I have 2 of these agent flows, and I think that they're going to run about, I don't know, 100 times for that agent across all of my employees. Maybe it's to request time off or something like that. And then lastly, I'm able to decide if I have any autonomous triggers. For simplicity purposes, I'm going to say I have one. Maybe when a new employee joins, a new record is added, we actually automatically get them signed up for their hardware or send them their hardware. And so this occurs, I have 10 employees on average that join each month. I won't use deep reasoning. So again, deep reasoning is an additional charge. So we give you all the options that actually drive the meter. How many agent actions? Maybe this one only has 3 and none of them are a flow. And then last but not least, you're able to select optional modifiers. These right now are prompt tools. This is going to grow to things like code interpreter and other features and capabilities as they come in. But today it's just prompt tools. Maybe I use one basic prompt. And you can learn more about prompts and the models they use that drive basic, standard, and premium. But I use one prompt that smooths out responses that are generated off of a certain data source. And I know this data source is going to be leveraged, or I'm guessing it's going to be leveraged half of the time. So I'm going to say maybe it's going to occur 500 times. And as I'm making all of these changes, you see all of that message calculation is happening on the right. So I can see how much is coming from those optional modifiers, autonomous triggers, my task completion or actions and topics, message consumption, and then message consumption driven by knowledge, and then my total consumption here. Now, what I would say is obviously the billing model is quite complex and there's a lot of features that you can use, but all you really need to have in the very beginning when you're thinking about your agent is about how many people have access to it, how often will they talk with it, will it be customer facing or employee facing? Let's say this one's going to be customer. Is it going to use generative? Are you going to use LLM orchestration? Are you going to stick with more classic? And then about how much traffic is going to be just Q&A versus task completion. If you have that information, you can already start to get a relatively broad estimation. And then as your agent is built, you can refine it and tweak it as necessary. But yeah, that's the estimator tool. You can easily reset it. I'm currently working on a V2 of this tool, which will allow you to save the capabilities, have additional features. We're bringing in some additional agent types like Copilot Chat. So more improvements to come, but I hope this is helpful. And any questions, please drop them in the chat because I know we are 5 minutes over time. So I want to be respectful of you all. And thank you so much for your time.
Awesome. Thank you so very much, Kendra.